constant thing in nature is change. And so since the environment is changing, leadership and many other things must change along the new environment.
Tamale South goes wild. Supporters of the NDC warn national executives not to step forward in the area as Haruna Idrisu is kicked out and Dr. K.C. Alatoforsen takes over as minority leader.
We look at Western region. It's one region that has not been represented on the front bench for a long while.
Meanwhile, chairman of the party, Johnson Asiedu Nketia, says the move, among other things, is to ensure regional balance.
We are telling you people, without minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, no any other minority. We don't want any minority leader.
Also in this bulletin, Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice begins probe into alleged conflict of interest in 2.6 million cedi payment made by the National Cathedral Secretariat. Details as it right officially for comment from the board of the Secretariat. Also, Ministry of Health cite unexpected vaccine hesitancy, cold chain storage challenges, spontaneous donations, as well as manufacturer storage difficulties as reasons why vaccines worth $81 million paid for by the government is yet to be received. The ministry insists it is upholding the interest of the state. Has anybody told them that we are dissatisfied with our leadership? Why are they imposing leadership on us? They don't have the power to decide leadership for us without consulting the caucus. These are the words of a member of the minority in parliament, Alhaji Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, when he vehemently opposed the decision of the leadership of the National Democratic Congress to replace the current leadership of the minority in parliament with a new crop of leaders. According to him, this development looks like the party wants to force people on them against due process. We'll hear from him shortly. But first, here is what the minority leader of parliament, Haruna Idrisu, said about his achievement as the leader of the caucus on PM Express Monday.
Even with the vote of censure, I don't have it easy. There are people within the NDC and outside the NDC who say, and the minority failed. The question I ask, failed to do what? Article 82 imposes an onerous burden on whoever is moving the motion that you must have 2/3 majority. I'm well aware that the Ghanaian people didn't give NDC other than 137 seats. Currently probably with 136 because one is not able to participate actively and fully as he should, the member for Asin North in our deliberations. Now, in moving the motion, I was convinced that given the public posture and public pronouncements of our colleagues opposite the aisle, they will support me with some 47-67 votes so that I could seal and get a 2/3 majority. You saw them walk out and boycott it, just as they did to COVID. So if they love this country, they would not have boycotted a COVID probe. If they love this country, they would not have boycotted a censorship motion of a minister that they themselves accept publicly and in their hearts. That is a failure. To complete this, I would have done 20 years in Parliament. I've had a rare privilege to serve the Republic as Minister for Communications. My footprints are there.
Employment.
Minister for Trade and Industry, my footprints are there. Minister for Employment, my footprints are there. Even as minority leader, you may like or dislike Haruna. At least I got a speaker elected. I got a budget rejected and installed. I got a Japan rejected. I got a debt exchange which is still struggling to be approved in service of the people. In the northern region, that's not a pleasant description of me. It's a democratic party. At least what I like about the NDC, we've become more democratic. And the party have become more resourceful. And its resourcefulness reflects in its human resources. Democratic because we've gone past those days where they were in positions of candidates, evaluation of candidates. Now you are subjected to competitive democratic primaries. The presidential candidate will be subjected to that. Parliamentary candidates will be subjected to that. The Tamale South seat is free, it's open. When nominations open, you can come in. The only thing I can assure you is that you won't get more than 5% of the vote, or probably 2%.
Here we go.
Some 95%.
So that's a warning to anybody who is harboring the thought.
No, he won't make more than 5%.
But that
I still have the trust and confidence
of the people in that region.
Well, after the news broke about the removal of their member of parliament as a minority leader of parliament, constituent of Tamale South have expressed the utmost disapproval at the decision of the party. They spoke to Northern Region correspondent Martina Bogri.
Katilanga, Almambabi, Mundaja Manuatia, Alatulia majority leader, Katigale, Katikara, which is supposed to be one of the character majority leader, Mundaja minority leader, Alatulia majority leader, Traveling Capital. To understand why Katikara to part of the man. Lawyer Haruna is a member of parliament for Taman South. Kartiba Muna, Kamungo minority, come appreciate one number minority. The Bang White upon my was one of the year. Dama, the Manotalizma. I said, I 50 quoting.
We are in my opposition now, so we have never had such a thing before. During NDC regime, it was Alvin Baldwin who was minority, and then when the party came to power, he was majority, and yet he is the Speaker of Parliament. So how come is it that it came to Haruna and you people are telling us that he should step down? You are changing the minority leader. We are telling you people, without minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, no any other minority. We don't want any minority leader apart from Haruna Idrisu.
People take when I said a few, even if it's a decision taken by National Executive Committee, it's still a few compared to executive at all regional levels, executive at all constituency levels, executive at all branch levels.
Don't make mistake to try to come to Taman South. When you come to Taman South, we'll show you that, and then we are popular. I'm telling you.
Well, the situation is no different in Asawase constituency in the Ashanti region, where some members of the party have described the changes made in the minority side of parliament as unnecessary. They believe the ability to win the speakership position despite being in the minority is enough proof of their capabilities. According to the NDC supporters, the change may affect their chances in the next election.
We consider this as unnecessary and irrelevant because we don't think it is going to work. They are just only trying to test the waters, and we are not going to sit down for this thing to happen because we suffered before they got to where they are now. So we are not going to leave anything unturned for them to do whatever they want to do to just destroy our party, because NDC suffered. People died in the name of NDC for NDC to be where it is right now. So we are not going to sit aloof and look at them to do whatever they are trying to do right now.
Before a change is made, you need to get some lapses in the current leaders. And I'll recall when after the election, 2020 elections, NDC have 126 parliamentarians, MPP have 138. But due to the hard work of the leadership, they were able to manage and get the speaker for the party. How come leaders who were able to manage and get a speaker for opposition party for the first time in the history of Ghana be changed without any reason? And we are heading towards 2024 elections. And these elections is not an easy election. We need those who have worked in the parliament for a very long time, knows the dynamics of the parliament, who can work very hard to supersede the leaders of the MPP. We want to tell JM, because we are all fighting for JM, that those who are behind this change don't want him to become the president. If they really want him to become the president, they will make this unnecessary change.
Speaking on Asempa FM's Ekusi saying Tuesday, Murtala Mohammed, a member of the minority side, said no one has the right to decide who becomes their leader without the input of the caucus.
Who did they consult? We are practicing a democracy. And this NDC, nobody in NDC is bigger than the NDC. I have never seen any parliament where a leadership of that parliament, particularly the caucus of the parliament, leadership is imposed on the caucus. What they should have done was to consult us. And all the experiences I've had and what I have gone through and what I read, usually they will propose to parliamentary caucus and the caucus will take a decision. Now, why would you impose leaders on us? The first question is, has anybody in parliament told the party or some members of the national executive that we are dissatisfied with our leadership? They need to tell us. Two, have they consulted or did they consult the leadership of even the caucus, even those who are taken out? My understanding is that they were not even consulted. I mean, natural justice demands that if you have leadership and you want to change them, call them. Look, for ABCD reason, we think that we want to change you people. They were not consulted. So it looks as if they are being hounded out. And that is why I think that it is not appropriate. And in any case, the timing is completely wrong. This is not the time we should be rocking the boat. This is not the time we should be engaging. As I talk to you now, there are germane issues that Ghanaians are preoccupied with. That debt restructuring, the Auditor General's report, these are of very important issues to the Ghanaian people. Now, we are having these discussions and boom, leadership have been changed without consulting the parliamentary caucus. I think it is undemocratic. I think that the democratic principles can hold in sane. It is not limited to any political party. Everybody, including the NDC, must respect that. So in as much as I have tremendous respect for our party leadership, I think that they have gotten it completely wrong. The other question I ask is, at what forum was the decision taken? Was it fake? If it wasn't fake, who took that decision? If it was fake, some of us would want to see the minutes of the meeting that occasioned the decisions they have taken. We would want to know. And if we are asking this question, we are not being disrespectful to the leadership. That is what democracy expects us to do. We need to ask questions. Now, I have no doubt in the quality of leadership of parliament we have today.
Now, chairman of the party, Johnson Asiedu-Nkete, explains the objective of the action is to achieve regional balance. Moreover, he says economic issues will top the agenda from now to election 2024, so the party wants to put its best foot forward. He spoke to my colleague, Blessed Suga.
We've issued a letter from headquarters signed by the General Secretary, the new General Secretary, Honorable Fifi Fiavi Kote, communicating formally to Mr. Speaker changes that we have made in our front line in Parliament. That is indeed true. And the new changes will bring on board Dr. Kesela Tuforsen as the new minority leader, Honorable Ama Kufibwa as the new deputy minority leader, and Honorable Governance Kwame Agboja as the new chief whip. And then we maintain Honorable Doyo Ganza and Honorable Ahmed Ibrahim. So this make up the new list of leadership in Parliament.
There's the obvious question as to why the NDC is taking the decision now.
We started reorganization of our structures to be able to position ourselves to fight election 2024. And in terms of why, it means what it tells you is that the only constant thing in nature is change. And so since the environment is changing, leadership and many other things must change along the new environment. We know, for instance, that going into election 2024, the economy is going to be the major battleground. And so many of the debates and other discussions will focus on the economy. So you better put your best man in the economy forward. And that is what we've done. And then we also looked at energy, this petroleum and electricity challenges. And so we needed to settle on Kofi Amabua, our former minister, to be the deputy minority leader. And then the other area is infrastructure. And Kwame Ogboja being our man in infrastructure should play a key role. So that generally is what informed the changes. But there are other things that are coincidental. You take the leadership of Parliament, we are bound to organize ourselves in such a way that, by and large, we provide for regional balance and other balances in our ways of doing things. And so since it is very difficult to get representation of 16 regions in 5 appointments, you need to do a lot of mathematics. And our view is that the balance cannot be secured with only one segment of the party. So the elections have turned out certain leaders. We already have other leaders that are already existing. And then also, if we are doing appointments, we take all these as a whole to try and see how we can get a fair balance. When you look at Western region, it's one region that has not been represented on the front bench for a long while. I remember when we were in 92 thereabout, 93 thereabout, that we put somebody on the front bench for a while, and that ended it. So it's a significant region that we need to look at. So when we got the combination of Kofi Amabua from Western region and he being also very conversant with the energy sector, we thought that it was a good choice, so we put him there.
So we've been joined in this particular conversation by a political scientist with the University of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, and also the executive director for the ASEPA, Dr. Rashid Draman, that's the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Grateful that you could join us, gentlemen. But in studio here, head of our political desk here at Joy News, Evans Mensah, has been following this development keenly and joins me in studio with more on this. Evans, so you have been keeping an eye on this particular one, especially on what is happening in the minority front. What have you picked up so far?
So this has led to a mini revolt on the minority front in Parliament against the leadership of the NDC. There are many who have gone public already. Murtala Mohammed, Cletus Avoka, and Cletus Avoka used to be a former leader of the NDC in Parliament as well. Himself have gone public and made the assertion that the leadership must reverse the decision because they were not consulted, and so they don't see how the new crop of leaders that have been appointed will have legitimacy. They've questioned the timing of this as well. Murtala Mohammed makes the point that they believe have the NDC on the ropes. Why do you want to throw this in and divert attention from the MPP onto ourselves, negatively so? And so they're disappointed by the decision. In fact, they express a concern that Haruna Idrisu's leadership hasn't been one that they find issue with, and so they don't see why the party has taken the decision to remove them. And that's the public confessions of disagreement with the party. And our sources within the minority ranks in Parliament also tell us that if you check their platforms, the minority NDC MP's platform, there is deep disagreement, and the sentiment that have been expressed by Murtala and Cletus Avoka is shared by many as well. In fact, they believe by many on the minority platform is that Dr. Keselato forcing Kwame Agboja in particular, those two who have not come in together with
Emmanuel Amakufibua.
Amakufibua should reject the appointment and request the party to consult, the rest of the minority members before they accept and go on to take up the position. Because if they don't do that, there's one particular message that was put on a platform that make the point categorically they will struggle to get cooperation from their own colleagues in the House. I mean, especially when you approach an election, you don't want that distraction in the way. It's all about legitimacy here. And so there's that crop of NDC MPs who are not happy with this. Obviously, the two individuals, Asim Muntaka Mubarak and Harun Idrisu themselves, did not know anything about this until it happened. Now, we've listened to Asiru Nketia make the point that a senior member of the party was sent to sort of inform Harun Idrisu and Muntaka Mubarak about the impending changes. It's my understanding that can be the case. And there's a challenge thrown to Asiru Nketia to name the individual who was sent out to engage the two. So I believe we haven't heard the last of this yet.
But I mean, you've been following politics and the political landscape in this country for some time. What do you think will be the impact of this action on the work of the minority in Parliament? It's
obvious. If everything we're hearing from the aggrieved minority MPP, NDC in the House is anything to go by, there will be a challenge getting cooperation from the other minority MDC MPs, working with the new crop of leaders to execute the party's agenda. That, for me, is the most obvious one, especially where the complaint is that we have not been consulted, and yet you are appointing leaders. In fact, Murtala Mohammed makes the point that this is an imposition. So if that is a view held by some, and it can be all, but some within the NDC minority in Parliament, that this is an imposition, then you will straight away see the challenges that Dr. Keselato Forcing and others will have, trying to prosecute the party's agenda. And for Governor Agboja, his job is to be a whip. The whip system essentially is to get your colleagues in the House to toe the party line when the party decides that this is what we want to do in the House. That then becomes difficult, right? So then you're trying to exert your authority, but then the questions will arise about the legitimacy. What legitimacy do you have? I see that to be a challenge, and the party will have to address that.
Okay. We haven't heard from any of the leaders who have been kicked out?
No, not directly. But I mean, through obviously working our sources, they are not happy with what has happened. And they've said that they haven't been consulted. Remember that just last week, Muntaka Mubarak spoke to us and denied that the rumors that were making around that there's going to be leadership change, only for this to happen today. And then just yesterday, Harun Idrisu was sitting in the same studio with me, talking about his plans for his colleagues, asserting how he's going to push for many of them to retain their seats in the primary, only to be removed the next morning. So this clearly, from the two main leaders, came as a surprise to them, and they're unhappy with it.
Okay, grateful. So that's Evans Mensah. He is head of political desk here at Joy News. Let's broaden the discussion now and bring in a political scientist with the University of Ghana, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who has joined us on Zoom, as well as Dr. Rashid Draman. He is Executive Director for the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Let me start with you, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante. What could make a party take such decision in a critical moment as this?
A lot of factors come to play when you are looking at this thing. One is, remember that political parties giving their structure, and we're talking about a mass political party here, they have what it takes to pick signals about the goings on in Parliament and the rest of them. So if they pick something and they realize that it doesn't gel with them, they have a way of dealing with that. Remember also that political party exists primarily in power and form elections. That is something that they can't toy with. So in line with this, they will always want to look at opportunities, the slightest opportunity that will give them the advantage to be able to realize their dream. So you have these things. But apart from that, there are other factors that really has contributed to this. One is that the party really want to position itself, that they are in for a battle of 2024. They are looking for any means possible to win power. So if they pick signals that there are things that will not work for them, obviously they will have a way of going around it. That is not to suggest that if there are processes, and I'm talking about institutions within the parties that they need to observe, they need to jettison them. No. But the million-dollar question is that if you look at the grieve, the statement, the concerns expressed, you ask yourself whether the NDC has something written down in terms of rules governing decisions of this nature. Okay. All right, is it written in their constitution or any of the rules governing the conduct of the party? That is something that we are not clear about. But that is not to say that in a democracy, whenever you are taking a decision of this nature, you should ignore everybody. No. Consensus is the magic word that you need at all times. But as you don't get here, give us something to ponder over. Issue of what? The economy. That you need somebody with a know-how in economics to lead them. Even though that argument, yes, is a little weak, but it also resonates with research on the ground that if you look at the things that influence voter choices, one of it, the foremost, is the economy. Okay. So you need somebody who has what it takes to be able to understand the economic analysis and all that. That is not to say that any member of parliament cannot learn a few things in economics and then move on. Okay. He also talked, if you look at what they've done, I can also glean from what has happened that issue of ethnicity is in there. Look at the leadership of the party as at last election. JM, Nodna. Muntaka, Nodna. Haruna Idrisu, Nodna. The rest of them. So you ask yourself, if it's a mass party, then we want to see a reflection in all the various regions, at least most of them here. So if you look at the current appointment that they've done, Atofos and Central Region, they brought in somebody from a different region. Then Agboja, Central Region. Then you are talking about Doyo, that is Greater Accra. That's a good mix.
Agboja, you mean Volta region? Is that what you wanted to say?
Sorry, Volta region, I'm sorry. That's a good mix because take it or leave it, ethnicity is an important variable in election, except that we are silent about it. But political parties take due notice of this and then play it as and when it's necessary. Because if you don't, it is even the party's interest to applaud this type of change in the sense that it will constitute the building blocks for election campaign. That look at your party leadership in parliament. You call it a mass party. Does it reflect that? Okay. So that is another one. Then they talk about issue of ethnicity. I've mentioned the economy is one important thing. But one thing that also comes to mind, that is from my own perspective, is the issue of performance. There's no doubt that the NDC leadership, outgoing leadership, had done themselves a lot of good. Look at, they were able to canvass for votes to get a speaker elected from their within. Okay. 2, they've been able to kick away a lot of policies that were injurious, so to speak, to Ghanaians. The cathedral, the budget, the e-levy, and whatnot. They've done their bit. But if you look at it, the convex is that when we talk about the VAT, the leadership came out saying that, yes, they are going to kick against the 2.5% VAT. And in no time, on the day of voting, 1% disappeared. Is it the case that the whip was able to do his work or not? Okay. You also recall that minority leader himself, at a point in time, there was a program in Ghana here where he said that they have failed to do the oversight, their responsibility, they failed to execute it very well. That came from the mouth of minority leader and all that. If you put all this thing together, it gives you an inkling and that maybe all is not well. But remember, political parties exist to win power. They are not for fanfare. So yes, much as that, I don't support the fact that they ignore some of the democratic processes, ethos and whatnot, but that they have business. And the business is to win power and form that government. And that is what we are seeing.
Anyway, I'll come back to you on the same regional balance thing because it looks like there's nobody from the northern region in there. But Dr. Rahman, let me come to you. You've been actively engaged in institutional, parliamentary, and public financial management, evaluation, and governance issues for the past 15 years, and have carried out pioneering work with more than 30 parliament and governments in Africa, including the Pan-African ECOWAS Parliament and other parliaments around the world. How strange is this decision that the NDC has taken?
Well, I think at the end of the day, it's the party that decides who their leaders are in parliament. And it's even the party that decides, when they have power, who becomes Speaker of Parliament. I think we are all witnesses to this over the years, that the party that has the majority will put forward their candidate. And over the years, it's always been the case that the candidate would win, except in this 8th Parliament. What is strange about this, I would say, is, two things. First of all, I am very surprised that the leadership of the party has not paid very serious attention to the nature of this parliament. Where every single vote counts. It's not a parliament where you can afford, you have the luxury to lose maybe 1 or 2 votes and then you will still be okay. Mm-hmm. And then secondly, I think we are talking about a party preparing itself to win elections. You win elections, first of all, if you are united. I don't know whether they have taken this into account, that, if in the end we have a minority caucus in disarray, the first and foremost group that Ghanaians see as the face of a political party that is waiting to take the reins of power is the group in parliament and the performance of that group. If today we wake up as a result of this decision, we have the minority in disarray, they are going to present a portrait of a group that is not ready to take power. So that is why the strange part of it for me is the fact that maybe as we are hearing from, your colleague Evans, that some members have already come out to say the caucus was not consulted. For me, that is very strange. And in fact, if that is the case, it makes nonsense of the whole idea of democracy, because, these are people who are supposed to represent us. We give them the mandate. We are supposed to be consulted. Each time citizens complain that members of parliament take decisions without, very deep consultation in terms of seeking the views of those who send them to parliament in the first place. And then we have a party that is waiting to take on the reins of government, taking a decision without consulting its rank and file in parliament. And if that is actually the case, what you are going to have, as Evans has indicated, is that it's going to be very difficult to whip everybody in line. And in this 8th Parliament, even if you lose only Haruna and Muntaka on critical matters that they need all the numbers, that is going to spell a lot of difficulty for the NDC. So, having said all this, I think at the end of the day, they have a business of representing all of us in Parliament. They have a business of being the party that's supposed to hold the government to account. So whatever the differences are, whatever the challenges are, I believe the leaders are listening. They must act very, very quickly, because we are hearing already that in Tamale there are disturbances. I don't know to what extent that is. True, you talk about regional balance and the need to have a good balance. But maybe in doing that also, you don't create a problem for yourself. That is very, very important. And I think the leaders would really need to carefully think about their next steps and to make sure that those that they have put forward would have the legitimacy to have their word being taken by those that they are supposed to be leading. Because if they lose that legitimacy, then they cannot mobilize anybody.
Okay.
And we have seen over the years the leadership that they have in terms of performance. I think, I mean, for me, I would give them a lot of credit for what they were able to do for the party. They brought the party from a deficit of about 70 in the 7th Parliament, almost snatching the majority in the 8th Parliament. They did something that we never saw in the history of our country, getting a speaker elected from the minority group. For the first time in our history, I mean, I've been following this parliament for more than 20 years now. And over the years, I have placed our parliament in the category of parliaments that are simply rubber stamp when it comes to the approval of the national budget. We have 3 categories of parliament: those that have a lot of power, make budgets and so on; those that are just budget approving; and then those just simply are there to rubber stamp whatever comes. And over the years, I mean, our parliament has been in this 3rd category. In the 8th Parliament, through these leaders that they have, I think we've been able to see even some rejections of sections of the budget. It was very pleasant to some of us, I mean, as people watching Parliament perform its oversight functions. So you put all these together, I think by and large, I mean, there might be some other reasons that we don't know of. But I think the next few days will tell us.
Okay. Dr. Asante, we've heard from Tamale, we've heard from Asawase. When you look at the leadership, it looks like they missed out on the northern region and missed out on the Ashanti region. What could be the possible impact on the party if you look at how the supposed regional balance had been handled?
Oh, obviously, you can't satisfy all the interest when we are talking about regional balance, because you have only about 5 seats in terms of the leadership of the House. So you won't get everybody in there. But at least that effort to know that there exists a problem and that this problem I want to address, that's the way to go.
Okay.
So I believe that that the people will take in their strides and then move on. But there's a little history to this. In the 1980s, when the PFP lost election, Kwekuba and late Owusu Achambo challenged Victor Owusu for, Victor made a move to, change leadership of parliament. And these people rose up, criticized, and then they were expelled from the party because they hauled them before the disciplinary committee saying that they have gone against the party rules and all that. They were expelled and they went to court.
Okay.
Before the court would decide, and then there was a coup and all there is. So there's a certain background. But if you look at all these things, for me, as a student of politics, I believe and that these things you need to manage and manage well.
Okay, all right.
Because you are talking about leadership and you are talking about people who represent others in parliament and all that. So, yes, the decision has been taken. They need to take them in their strides and then work with this parliament, with this leadership. Why am I saying this? Because remember,
Doc, I'm grateful to you. I think the point is well made here. But Dr. Rashid, before I let you go, how must the minority handle this? If you can do this for me under a minute.
Well, I think for their own self-preservation, the last thing that they want to project is an image of disunity.
Okay.
So they want to clinch power in 2024. They need every single member of their party, particularly within parliament, to be together, to sing with one voice. So whatever they need to do from now on, I'm seeing the immediate backlash of this decision. I think the leaders have to get to work to make sure that power doesn't elude them in 2024.
Grateful to you, gentlemen, for joining us on the Joy News Prime. We'll take a quick break. We will return with more stories. Stay with us. Welcome back from the break. Now, the government of Ghana is expected to spend $31.34 million on what it calls post-COVID-19 skills development and productivity enhancement project. The project is a 5-year agreement signed with the African Development Bank. There is more in this report by Jacqueline Ansuma Yeboah.
The Post-COVID-19 Skills Development and Productivity Project is an initiative by the government of Ghana launched on Tuesday in Accra. The tax manager of the African Development Bank, Eko Patience Ogoma, indicated that the project would encompass 3 major areas which will be undertaken within 5 years. The project is expected to contribute to Ghana's sustainable post-COVID-19 recovery in the health sector and the restoration of livelihoods, income, and employment opportunities and private sector development.
The project components are 3. The first component will deal with skills development in higher education for strengthening the health sector, and this requires the construction of 3 facilities. Component 2 will be rebuilding youth and women's livelihood through entrepreneurship and employment creation. We will also do provision of entrepreneurial skills among youth, women, and vulnerable groups. We also have the project management component.
Minister of Employment and Labor Relations, Ignatius Bafoewa, disclosed that several agencies have been assigned to ensure execution of this project.
Higher level skill training now, University of Ghana is championing that. And you know, so when it comes to training at the highest level, academia, they have their own structure and their own internal controls to make sure that such programs succeed. And now all the other ones which are not under the tertiary level, so we have Social Investment Fund, which since 1998 has been in existence and has been implementing such programs, implementing it. And they have the requisite experience to be able to do that. Besides that, Ministry of Finance is the main implementing agency. They have their eye on the project and they will keep on monitoring the project.
Head of the African Development Bank desk at the Ministry of Finance, Emmanuel Kojo, disclosed that the Ministry of Finance would improve its monitoring to guarantee that monies to be allocated to the project are used judiciously.
They have all spelled out in clear terms what they are going to use the money to do. I indicated that at the Ministry of Finance, we are going to step up our monitoring and supervision role to make sure that the intended purposes for this money is achieved. $1 has been released for A. You make sure that we follow through the flow from wherever and make sure that at the grassroots level it is done.
The government of Ghana believes this initiative will create more jobs for the youth in Ghana. Jacqueline Ansuma report for Joy News.
You're watching Joy News.